I've always believed that a house remembers the footsteps it favors. Our hallway narrow, tiled, and cooler than it had any right to be echoed louder when my brother Armin ran through it. His laughter bounced off the framed photographs like a string of silver bells. My steps. They sank into the grout line. Soundless, unnoticed. I used to imagine the tiles blushing for him and going gray under me. That morning, the house hummed with a cheerful urgency. The blender roared. Someone dropped a baking sheet. A delivery guy shouted from the gate. It was the kind of chaos that smells like icing sugar and cardamom chai. And even before I opened my bedroom door, I knew. It was for Armand Lena. "You're up." Amy's voice carried down the hall, a ribbon trailing behind it. "Beta, make sure the extra chairs are wiped. Guests will arrive early. Aunt lives to be first." I glanced at the stack of note cards on my desk, the blue corner of my file peeking out from under a mathematics textbook. The file had a title tab, National Innovation Fellowship, Finalist Documents. I ran my finger over it like an animal tracing the edge of a trap. I had been in labs when everyone else was in malls. I'd spent nights calibrating sensors with a blanket wrapped round my legs and a pencil behind my ear while the kettle gurgled like an old man. I had become very good at being quiet around my own progress. "Coming," I called, and tucked the file into the drawer. In the mirror, my hair was an apology I kept trying to comb straight. I pulled it back and slipped on the faded t-shirt that said University Robotics Club and took the hallway. As I passed the living room, I saw the new banner. "Congrats, Armand." Blue and gold letters strung across the bay window where the hibiscus plant leaned in like it wanted a front row seat. It wasn't his graduation, not his wedding, not a promotion. It was, according to the group chat, the Instagram story drafts. And the imported cupcake toppers with his name in cursive Armand's content creator milestone and collab launch. He'd crossed 100,000 followers last week. A cosmetics brand invited him to shoot a campaign. Someone had put a trophy emoji beside his name in the family group. They changed the group photo to his smiling face. I muted the chat. He bounded in from the kitchen, balanced a tray of samosas on one palm like a waiter, and kissed the air near my cheek. He always smelled like cologne, citrus notes, and a hint of something woody. I smelled like isopropyl alcohol and printer ink most days. Different economies. "Leans," he grinned wide. He loved his nickname for me. "You coming to the photo wall." Amy got that Polaroid camera. Jazza up the grid, you know? After I cleaned the chairs, I said, "You're a star." He winked, breezed on. He didn't notice my hand twitch toward my drawer. Toward the file that had my last 2 months inside it. Circuit diagrams. The proposal for a wearable sensor that could detect early tremors in Parkinson's patients. A letter on university letterhead that said, "Finalist in presentation, Saturday." 3 p.m. the same day he'd chosen for his party, because weekends trended. "It's good," I told myself as I carried a damp cloth to the patio. He's worked hard, too. He edits till dawn, he hustles, he's charming. That's a skill. The chairs looked back at me with cool plastic indifference. I wiped them anyway. From the kitchen, Amy was talking at a speed that meant she was happy. "We'll put the savory items on the left, sweets on the right. Armand wants that cool drip cake in the middle. Lena, did you bring the fairy lights from your room? And Beta, after you finish, can you run to the store? We need more soda. Oh, and the balloon pump, Lena. Always the same volley of requests, like I was her extra pair of hands. I didn't mind being useful. I minded the way being useful made me invisible. I placed chairs around the long table. It's the one we only unfurled for Eid or occasions, and felt the weight of the table's wooden edge against my hip. When we were little, Armand hid under this table during hide-and-seek, and I pretended not to see him even when his sneakers poked out. That was the thing about me. I was good at looking away. At carrying other people's happiness like a tray I could balance on 2 fingers. By the way, I started as Amy spread a delicate tablecloth and taped down corners against imagined drafts. "Saturday at 3, I have Beta." "Just a minute," she said, not unkindly, not rudely, just with the full body momentum of preparations. "Put the glue gun on. The tassels keep falling." I put the glue gun on, As the tip warmed and the glue stick became a clear muscle ready to flex, my phone buzzed. It was an email notification. I think part of me already knew. The subject was one of those that jump out and take your pulse hostage. Congratulations, Lena, National Innovation Fellowship. I read it twice, then 3 more times. I moved to the hallway so I could breathe alone. The committee had made their decision a day earlier than expected. The email said my Project Tremor Trace, a low-cost wearable for early detection of neurodegenerative tremors, had been awarded the top prize. The stipend would fund my prototype. The news whispered promises at me. Lab time, mentorship, a door that finally opened. I pressed the phone against my chest and closed my eyes. I allowed myself exactly 25 seconds of trembling joy. Then the blender roared again, and someone shouted, "Where are the teal napkins?" And I put the smile away like a fragile piece of china that needs the right shelf. I returned to the living room with my news clutched like a small bird in my hand. "Amy," I said, softly at first, then louder. "Amy, Lena, Beta, your Aunt Heina just called. She's bringing her scones even though we told her not to. Hide the store-bought biscuits before she starts comparing. And can you pick up Armin's suit?" The tailor said 5 o'clock. "Your Abu is in a meeting, don't disturb him." My eyes flicked toward the study where Abu sat hunched over spreadsheets like they were prayer. He ran a small import business that ate his attention in tidy, square bites. Arman was the conversation piece he'd always wanted to slide into networking chats. My son, the influencer. The phrase fit neatly around golf, around brand lunches, around the way men clap each other on the back. My daughter, the girl who plays with wires, had never had the same ring. "All right," I said, swallowing. "I'll go get the suit." And on the way, she added, "Swing by the party store balloon pump, remember?" I wrote a note to myself, suit pump, soda, napkins, bird bones. On the street, the heat was an argument no one could win. My sandals clicked. The suit bag was a sleeve of responsibility over my arm, and as I walked, I thought about telling the tailor, the shopkeeper, anyone, just to hear it out loud. I won. The words felt unreal. Like maybe the world would require me to show ID before it let me say them. At the party store, the sort of teenage employee with one earbud in and a tangle of bracelets scanned the pump. "Big party?" she asked. "For my brother," I said. "That's nice." "It is," I replied, and tasted the way that sentence didn't quite fit in my mouth. Like a foreign candy that crumbles to sand. On my way home, I stopped at the lakeside. The water was the color of pewter. I sat on the low wall and opened the email again. I read the sentence aloud, suffocating it with softness so no one would overhear. "We are delighted to inform you that you have been awarded the National Innovation Fellowship." My eyes burned. Not the way they do when you cry because of pain, but because the body behaves like weather. Something inside shifts, and tears fall the way rain does when the air decides it must. I swiped them away and finished my errands. By evening, our living room had molted into a set from a lifestyle magazine. A Polaroid frame made from foam core leaned against the sofa. Florals snaked up the photo wall, the fairy lights, my fairy lights, looped around the curtain rod and transformed the room into a net of small captured stars. I watched Arman in the mirror retie his tie for the 3rd time, not because he needed to, but because he enjoyed the theater of it. He called out from the archway with the effortlessness of the beloved. "Lena, quick mirror check. Am I a 10 or an 11? 11, I deadpanned. And he laughed because my sarcasm was his favorite background track. Abu finally emerged, adjusting his cufflinks. Smile like a moon slice. He clasped Arman's shoulder. "Proud of you, champ." The 2 words I'd rationed in my imagination for years, proud, and of you selected him with a will of their own. Abu's gaze flicked over me like I was furniture in a room he loved. "Lena, the parking situation will be chaotic. Can you coordinate with the valet?" "Sure," I said. I felt my email pinprick the inside of my thumb where my phone edge pressed. Guests arrived. Aunt Hina with scones, she insisted we're low sugar, darling, so Arman doesn't break out before the shoot. Uncle Tariq with jokes that needed permission slips. Cousin Nawal, already filming everything for her vlog, she was a satellite that orbited Armand's planet, catching his halo. Family friends poured in with breathless delight. The room filled with fragrance and stories, and the kind of laughter that always made me envy its volume. There is a kind of invisibility that happens in bright rooms. It's not that people refuse to see you. They just see around you. I carried platters, refilled bowls, answered questions about where to hang coats, where to put gifts. There's a skill to holding a tray so that people look at the food and not the person. One possessed that skill in abundance. "Lena, you look tired," Aunt Heine said, which was her way of telling me I looked the way she expected me to. "You mustn't spend all your time studying. Girls should keep their glow." She tapped my cheek lightly with a ringed finger. "Thanks, Auntie." Smile, tilt, vanish. "Armand?" Someone squealed. "You're viral. Tell us about the brand deal." Another called. He spoke with his hands, charisma spilling like a wave. "It's not a big thing. Just, a collab. But yeah, the audience is amazing. I want to do a charity line too. Stay tuned." He looked good with the tension around his shoulders, like a cloak tailored just for him. He had fun with it. He didn't seem mean about it. That almost made it worse. It's easier to hold on to anger when the person you're angry at is cruel. Lena Nawal swung her camera toward me. "Say something to Armand's fans." "Oh no. We love you. Thanks for supporting my brother." I stared at the lens. It stared back, glassy, expectant. "Thanks for supporting my brother," I said. My voice sounded like I'd borrowed it from someone else and hadn't yet found the right fit. "Great," Nawal chirped. She cut the clip and pivoted away. Like someone who had collected a postage stamp for her album and had no more use for the envelope. Somewhere around 9, the cake came out. The lights dimmed with collective glee. People sang a song that wasn't quite a birthday song but had the same melody. Because what else do you sing when someone is being worshipped with sugar and flame? Armand closed his eyes to make a wish. I found myself wondering what wishes do when they are launched in a room already full of everything. After the cake, toasts. This was new toast culture had found our family, and we embraced it like we embraced hashtags and matching outfits. Abu cleared his throat, raised a glass. "To my son Armand, you make us proud with your creativity and drive. When I was your age, I didn't even understand this world of content and influence. But I see your passion, and I salute it. Keep shining." To Armand. To Armand. They chorused, glasses clinking with a sound like tiny agreements. Emmy followed softer. "You were always a performer, Beta, from your school plays to your little magic tricks. May you be happy, above all." To Armand, to Armand. Aunt Heine couldn't resist. "Remember when Armand used to steal the show at weddings? Always the center of attention. Not shy like some people." Her eyes slid, a barely there movement that still found me. I swallowed. The email pulsed under my skin. The words "we are delighted" clanged against antennas, "not shy like some people." I looked over at the bay window, at the hibiscus leaning in, petals like red tongues. I thought, say it now. I thought, give your news to the room. But I imagined their faces doing that polite reconfiguration people's faces do when the subject shifts away from their chosen star. I imagined my announcement drooping in the air like a popped balloon. Later, I told myself, and hated the familiarity of that word on my tongue. Later had been my pillow and my gag. When the crowd thinned a little, I approached the cluster of my family, just the four of us, for a moment near the kitchen island, the crumbs of cake like confetti. "Emmy Abu," I began. "I got an email today." Abu was watching Armand pose with a group of friends. He half turned his ear toward me as if he could absorb my words while continuing to look elsewhere. "An email?" I repeated. "From the National Innovation Fellowship." Emmy's eyes flicked back to the cake knife, checking if someone might cut themselves. "Did you check if the dishwasher's on, Beta?" Yes. But the email before I could finish, someone called from the living room. "Armand, we haven't done the TikTok challenge." He laughed, rolled his shoulders the way he did when he was about to perform. "Coming." They moved with the pull of the room, and I was a loose thread the family didn't notice trailing behind them. That night, After the last guest left and the house settled into that post-party Saya room breaths out too. I stood by the sink rinsing the golden icing from serving knives. The water ran warm, forgiving. Amy stacked plates, humming. Abu loosened his tie and carried the trash out, the plastic bag bellyful and heavy. Armand lay sprawled across the sofa, scrolling through his phone, smiling at the flood of hearts and proud of you bro comments. I dried my hands and walked to the doorway. I wanted to tell you something I said to no one and to everyone. Salines, Armand mumbled, not looking up. I won the National Innovation Fellowship. Saying it out loud felt like removing a splinter you've carried too long. There was relief, but also a small hurt where it had been. The room didn't quite go silent. That would have been something. The hum of the refrigerator continued, the distant thud of a car door outside, the little tick of the ceiling fan's chain. Amy looked up. That's wonderful, she said. The way you talk when someone tells you a friend of a friend had a baby. Abu frowned slightly, thoughtful. Is this the thing with your project? The wrist gadget. The wearable sensor, I said. It detects early tremors. It's a big deal. The award there's funding and a feature in the tech magazine. They asked me to speak at the university panel next month. I stopped because I could hear how my voice lifted. How fragile it sounded, trying to be brave and bright and not knowing how. That's very good, Abu said, like a man checking off a line on a to-do list. Congrats, Beta. Armand finally looked over, grin automatic. Lena, that's awesome. You should post about it. Get some traction. Want me to shout it out tomorrow? For a strange second, I pictured my achievement arriving in the world wearing Armand's voice like a borrowed coat. So proud of my sis. Check out her little tech thing. The imagined caption shrank my work down to a cute accessory. I knew he meant well. I knew he was trying. But the ache pressed just under my ribs. Maybe, I said. Thank you. Big day tomorrow, Amy. Cut in, already stacking showered plates into ideas for the next event. We should sleep. Armand, you have your shoot in the morning. Lena, the house needs a quick tidy. The balloons will droop if we don't cut them down. Do it before bed. Sure, I said. My award bloomed quietly inside me like a night flower no one stepped out to see. In my room, I opened my drawer and took out the file. I spread the contents on my bed, sketches, data tables, the letter with the waterproof ink. The second page was a press note with a list of winners. My name looked strange in print, like a secret that decided to be obvious. I traced the edges of the page the way I used to trace outlines of countries in my atlas. A girl believing in borders and bridges with the same awe. I thought of the history of our house, photographs of Armand's first steps, Armand's first lost tooth, Armand's school play where he was a tree and still managed to be the star. I remembered the science fair at 12 when my volcano didn't erupt. I watched the teacher pat my arm, watched Amy's smile try and fail to cover disappointment. Watched Arminate then whisper to me, "It's okay. Next time you'll make it explode." He had believed in me then. Maybe he still did in his way. The world, though, had learned to clap loudest for the person who asked for the applause and brightest for the one under the ring light. I lay back and looked at the cracks in the ceiling. They made slow rivers branching toward the corners. Under their map, I found the little girl I used to be, the one who thought that triumphs were quiet so they could be kept safe. I had mistaken safety for absence. I had mistaken humility for silence. I had mistaken love for service. As if summoned, my phone chimed. A message from my advisor, Dr. Malik. "Proud of you, Lena. They picked the best one. Be ready for interviews. And celebrate a little, will you?" I stared at the words until they blurred softly. Celebrate a little. The house was asleep. In the dark, the fairy lights left a faint afterglow on my retinas. And I realized, half embarrassed, half defiant, that maybe the first celebration could be mine alone. I crept to the kitchen, poured a glass of cold milk, and broke off the corner of the cake where the frosting had sagged. In the glow of the open fridge, I whispered to myself, "Congratulations." It wasn't enough, but it was honest. I let the sweetness sit on my tongue for a slow count of 5. The next day, the party afterglow clung to the house like the scent of perfumed smoke. Streamers hung tiredly. The hibiscus looked smug. Armin had his shoot and then was off to the gym. Amy made a list of returns and thank yous. Abu left early, already on a call about shipping delays. And I began to prepare for my presentation, not the official one I'd already technically won, but the talk they wanted me to give. To the fellows cohort and donors next week. I rehearsed in front of the mirror, ignoring the way my voice broke on words like levodopa and accelerometer. I printed my slides. I ironed the only dress that made me feel like I owned space. I thought with a nervous excitement that made my stomach do skittish swirls about telling the extended family. Maybe tonight when we visited Dottie, I could bring it up. Dottie was a storyteller. She enjoyed a narrative. If I told her how the prototype had failed twice, how I had learned to solder properly only after setting off the fire alarm once, how Dr. Malik had said, "Elegance is simplicity in motion," and how I finally found a tie could make her see me. Maybe we could shift the air. You could tilt a picture frame a fraction and the whole room would feel different. Could you do that with a family? As if in answer, Aunt Heina sent a message to the family group. We should do a proper dinner for Armin next week too. Celebrate with the full khandan. Thoughts? Hearts and fireworks filled the thread. My finger hovered. I typed, "I have news to share too." The typing bubbles from others popped up and down, manic as fish. "Of course, darling," someone replied. "We'll give you a moment." A moment as in the sliver between the salad and the entree where people check their phones while you talk. I deleted my message and put the phone face down. I knew it like, rain's about to start from the way the air turns metallic. The moment they'd give me would be the same as every moment I had received so far. A space granted out of politeness. A grace period, not an enthusiasm. And I realized something flinty and dangerous. I didn't want a moment. I wanted a room. That afternoon, I went back to the drawer. I lifted the letter, read it again, and a plan took shape. Clean lines clicking together like the inside of a watch. The fellowship committee would announce the winners publicly on Friday with a live-streamed award segment at the university. They had asked me to attend and prepared a small plaque. They'd emailed the speakers list, deans, sponsors, press. It wasn't just a line in my CV. It was a stage with a microphone. It was a room. I saw suddenly, with painful clarity, that I had been endowed with something my family hadn't bothered to notice. I possessed an audience that didn't require my apology to exist. A room that would belong to me, even if only for 20 minutes. And I wanted them there. Not to steal it, not to clap under protest, but to look and see that the daughter who carried their chairs was now standing in a place where chairs face you. "Lena," Amy called from downstairs. "Do you have any of your pretty folders? I want to save the best photos from the party." "I'll bring them," I replied, and smoothed the letter on my bed. My hands trembled pleasantly. I felt like someone at the top of a hill who finally sees that the path didn't end at the fence. It dipped out of sight and continued somewhere else entirely. That evening at Dady's, the usual chorus of gossip, prayers, and mints played to an attentive room. Armand showed a clip from his shoot. He looked luminous on the phone screen, made for it. Dottie clucked over him, kissed his forehead, made the sign of protection. When she turned to me, her gaze softened at the edges the way it does for the overlooked. "And you, Lena?" "Studying?" I opened my mouth. I felt everyone's attention about to slide away like water on oiled glass. The old battle? The practiced retreat. Then I remembered the stage, the live stream, the plaque. I changed my question. "Dottie," I said, "are you free Friday afternoon?" She blinked, surprised. "Friday? For what?" "I'm receiving an award," I said, clear and simple. "At the university. They'll call me on stage." A hush, brief and precise. Even brief can be beautiful when it's the right shape. Dottie's eyes sharpened. "An award," she repeated. Yes, I didn't apologize with my shoulders. I didn't lower my voice to slip it under their conversations. "For my project." Armin leaned forward for real this time, curiosity halting his easy spin. Amy pressed her lips together the way she does when recalculating. Abu's brow lifted as if he had heard thunder he had misdiagnosed as traffic. "What kind of award?" Dottie asked, and it wasn't the question of someone seeking a polite exit from commitment. It was the question of a woman in a courtyard who knows the difference between a rumor and a revolution. "The National Innovation Fellowship," I said. "It comes with funding. And I'll be speaking. They'll be filming it." "Oh," Dottie murmured. She smiled, slow and real, and her fingers, thin and feathery, found mine. "Friday, I'll wear my blue shawl." Something in my chest loosened, aching and grateful. I squeezed her hand back and held on as if it were not only the hand of an old woman, but a rope thrown to a girl climbing a cliff. On the way home, the car was quiet. The kind of quiet that means people are thinking new thoughts and haven't decided whether to say them aloud. I watched streetlights move across the dashboard and thought about rooms that remember footsteps, their favorites, their habits. I wondered what it takes to make a room learn a new sound. Back in my bed, I stared up at the seams in the ceiling again. The cracks were the same. I was the one changing. I felt the part of me that always moved toward service look over its shoulder at me, puzzled. Like a loyal dog that has reached the end of its leash and doesn't understand why we're not turning back. I stroked its head. "It's okay. We're still kind. We're just not disappearing." I fell asleep thinking about Friday, about the way the lights would feel on my face, about the way a microphone warms to your hand like a small, living thing, about the way a room, if you stand in it long enough with your back straight and your voice, sure, might learn your name. The week leading up to Friday stretched like taffy sweet and sticky with expectation, but exhausting to pull through. I was rehearsing in my head even while brushing my teeth, whispering phrases about wearable sensors and early detection under my breath as if they were spells. In the morning, I wrote bullet points on sticky notes and pasted them above my desk, one by one. Meanwhile, the family group chat buzzed with another kind of excitement. Armand's appreciation dinner. Yes, another one. Aunt Heine had convinced everyone that Saturday's party wasn't enough. "The whole extended condon needs to honor Armand's success properly," she had typed, sprinkling confetti emojis like rice at a wedding. The family had rallied instantly. Friday night at Daddy's house, just after my award ceremony. I stared at the screen, my stomach twisting. They didn't even ask about my schedule. My event was at 3 o'clock, and by 5 we'd be heading to Daddy's for Armand's dinner. I typed, "I might be a little late. I have an award function that day." 2 people responded with a thumbs up. Another sent a smiley face. Then the flood of messages resumed about catering and seating and what song playlist would make Armand's arrival grand. No one asked me what award. No one asked where. I told myself not to be surprised. Still, I felt the disappointment sit inside me, heavy as uncooked dough. Friday came. The university hall smelled of polished wood and faint coffee. A banner stretched across the stage, National Innovation Fellowship Awards. The room buzzed with conversations about algorithms, prototypes, and funding. People carried laptops like briefcases of power. I spotted Dr. Malik near the stage, adjusting his tie. When he saw me, his face broke into a smile that felt like sunlight I hadn't realized I was craving. "Lena, there you are." "Nervous?" "A little." My palms were slick. "Good, that means you care. Remember, they're not here to judge you. They're here to believe in you." He squeezed my shoulder. I inhaled deeply, straightened my dress, and walked onto the stage when my name was called. The applause hit me like a wave. Not thunderous, not stadium level, but real. Enough to fill the empty spaces inside me. I began my speech, my voice shaking at first, but growing steadier with each word. "My name is Lena Rahman, and I developed a low-cost wearable device for early detection of neurodegenerative tremors. This project was born from watching my neighbor, Uncle Javed, struggle to get diagnosed in time. By the time doctors confirmed Parkinson's, years of subtle symptoms had already passed unnoticed. I asked myself, what if we could see the tremors earlier? I demonstrated the device, a small wristband with sensors. Slides glowed behind me, showing graphs and test results. My voice grew strong, conviction pushing away fear. Sometimes innovation isn't about flashy technology. It's about accessibility, about dignity. My dream is to make this device affordable enough that no one has to wait years for help. And thanks to this fellowship, that dream can become reality. The audience clapped louder now, warmer. A journalist scribbled notes. Cameras flashed. For a brief, perfect moment, I felt seen. I received the plaque, its engraved words shining under the lights. The host shook my hand and whispered, "Congratulations, Miss Rahman. You'll go far." I wanted to bottle that sentence and sip it for the rest of my life. When I got home, flushed with triumph, the house was buzzing, but not for me. Amy was in the kitchen, yelling at the caterer on the phone. "No, biryani for 80, not 60. My son's dinner is not a joke." Armand was in the living room practicing his grand entrance walk, his friends cheering him on. He wore a new blazer, hairstyled to perfection. I placed my plaque on the hallway table where everyone would see it. For once, I wanted my achievement to stand shoulder to shoulder with his. "Emmy," I said, stepping into the kitchen. The ceremony went really well. They even Lena, Beta, not now. "Please iron the table runner. Guests will notice creases." "But I later, hon. Just help me now." The warmth from the ceremony drained out of me. I picked up the iron. My hands shook as steam hissed. By evening, the family had gathered at Dottie's. Lights twinkled in the courtyard. And a giant banner screamed, "We love you, Armin." People clapped when he walked in, phones flashing as if he were a celebrity. He soaked it in with that effortless charm of his. I trailed behind, plaque carefully wrapped in its velvet case. My chest thumped with anticipation. Tonight I would tell them. Tonight they would know. But no one asked me where I'd been earlier. Not one person. Dinner was served and speeches began. Uncle Tariq stood, raising his glass. "To Armin, the pride of our family. May his star continue to rise." "To Armin." The crowd echoed, glasses clinking. Then Aunt Heina took the floor. "Beta, you've made us so happy. Not just followers, true fans. You're an inspiration to the younger cousins." Armand grinned, soaking it up. Everyone clapped again. I waited for a pause, for a sliver of silence I could step into. My fingers brushed the velvet case in my lap. The words National Innovation Fellowship burned against my palm. Finally, I stood. My heart pounded so loud I thought they'd hear it. I'd like to share something too." The room quieted for a fraction of a second. Eyes turned toward me, polite but expectant. I lifted the plaque, my voice trembling. "Today I received the National Innovation Fellowship Award for my project on early detection of tremors. It's S. It's a national honor." A beat of silence. Then someone coughed. "Oh, mashallah," Aunt Heina said vaguely, already turning her head. "Very nice, Beta." "So proud, Lena," Amy added, distracted, signaling a waiter about refills. Armin, without malice but with a grin, clapped slowly. "That's great, Leons. Maybe we can get a collab video out of it. Tech meets lifestyle, you know?" A ripple of polite laughter spread across the room. The attention slipped away like water draining from cupped hands. In seconds, conversation shifted back to Armand's brand deal, to his followers, to his next video. My plaque glinted on the table, ignored. I sat down, heat rushing to my face. My chest ached as if something precious had been crushed underfoot. Inside, my thoughts screamed, "Didn't you hear me? Didn't you see? Do you understand what this means?" But outwardly, I smiled tightly, my nails digging crescents into my palm. They had given me my moment, just as promised in the group chat. A sliver between bites of biryani. A pause in Armand's symphony. Nothing more. And in that humiliation, that casual dismissal, something hardened inside me. A seed of fury. A vow. If they couldn't see me now, then I would show them in a way they could never ignore. The night after Dadi's dinner, I lay awake staring at the faint outlines of the fairy lights still taped to my wall. My award plaque sat on the desk, glinting in the moonlight, quiet and patient. It was strange how something so heavy in meaning could feel invisible in a room full of people. I replayed the scene in my head again and again. The polite claps, the sidelong glances, the way my announcement dissolved like steam. It wasn't just disappointment. It was humiliation. They didn't laugh outright. They didn't mock me openly. But they gave me something far worse. Silence dressed up as courtesy. A dismissal so soft it could almost be mistaken for kindness. It didn't cut so deep. And that night, I decided I wouldn't beg for their attention anymore. I would take it. On Monday morning, my phone buzzed while I was organizing my notes for university. The caller ID flashed, National Innovation Fellowship Office. My breath hitched. "Hello," I answered, trying to sound professional, though my heart hammered. "Good morning, Ms. Rahman," came the bright voice of a woman. "We're thrilled to inform you that not only will your project be featured in the fellowship press release, but you've also been selected as one of the keynote speakers at the National Youth Science Conference next month." I froze. Keynote speaker. Yes, your proposal stood out because it's practical, socially impactful, and cost-efficient. The committee believes your story could inspire young innovators nationwide. It'll be televised and live-streamed. Congratulations. My hand trembled as I jotted notes on a scrap of paper. National, televised, keynote. "Thank you," I whispered. My throat tight. "Thank you so much." When the call ended, I pressed both hands to my face and laughed out loud. Not a polite laugh, not a restrained giggle, but a wild, giddy sound I didn't recognize as mine. This wasn't just an award. This was a stage bigger than anything Armand had ever stood on. And it was mine. That evening, I tried again. I gathered courage like armor and walked into the living room, where Amy scrolled on her phone and Abu was reading the newspaper. "I have news," I began carefully. "Yes, Beta." Amy didn't look up. "The fellowship office called. They want me to give the keynote at the National Youth Science Conference. It's going to be televised." Silence. Abu turned a page. "That's good. More visibility for you." Amy smiled faintly, distracted. "Just don't neglect your health. You've lost weight. Eat properly." And then before I could even process their underwhelming response, Armand bounded in, waving his phone. "Guys, big news." Everyone's heads lifted. "I just got invited to a brand launch in Dubai. They'll fly me out, all expenses paid. Can you believe it?" He grinned, eyes shining. The room erupted. Mashola's claps, cheers, questions, plans, and my news drowned again in the tide of his. I sat frozen, my hands gripping the fabric of my dress, my chest tightening. The universe had given me something monumental, and my family had tossed it aside like a receipt at the bottom of a grocery bag. That's when I realized it wasn't ignorance. It wasn't distraction. It was a choice. They had decided whose light deserved to be celebrated. And it wasn't mine. 2 days later, while clearing the dining table, I overheard a conversation that shifted everything. Amy and Aunt Heina sat in the kitchen, sipping tea. They spoke in low tones, but I had learned to hear what wasn't meant for me. "Lena means well," Aunt Heina said, "but let's be honest, these academic things never last. A few articles, maybe a certificate. Nothing compared to Armin's future. He has real reach, real influence." Amy chuckled softly. "True, Lena is our quiet one. Always has been. She doesn't crave the spotlight like Armin. Maybe it's better this way. Better this way." The words hit me like stones. So that was it. My invisibility wasn't an accident. It was a narrative they had written for me, the quiet daughter, the helpful one, the background shadow to her shining brother. And they preferred it that way. I backed away from the kitchen, my pulse hammering. Something inside me cracked, but not in the way things break when they shatter. No, it cracked like a seed's shell splitting to let something unstoppable grow. That same week, the university held a press conference to announce the fellowship winners. I stood on stage with other innovators, my plaque displayed proudly. The dean introduced us one by one, and cameras flashed. Later, as I walked out of the hall, a journalist approached me. "Ms. Rahman, congratulations. Your project is making waves. Did you know a major healthcare foundation has expressed interest in funding large-scale trials of your wearable?" I stopped in my tracks. I didn't know. They were very impressed by your presentation. Expect to hear from them soon. I walked home in a daze, the city noise muffled like cotton in my ears. Trials, funding, real-world impact. And I knew with bone-deep certainty that this wasn't just my personal victory. This was bigger. This was history bending in my favor. That night, I sat at my desk and stared at the plaque. I thought about my family's laughter, their clinking glasses, their casual dismissal. I thought about Aunt Hina's words, "These academic things never last." I thought about my brother's endless spotlight and how my family polished it for him every chance they got. And then I thought about the conference, the cameras, the national stage. What if I invited them? What if I made them sit in the audience while the world recognized me? What if they watched with their own eyes as strangers applauded the daughter they had ignored? I pictured their faces, shock, disbelief, maybe even regret. The thought made my pulse race, not with fear, but with a fierce, vindicating hunger. Yes, that would be my revenge. Not by shouting, not by begging, but by standing so tall on a stage that they could never again pretend not to see me. A week later, the email arrived. Subject: keynote details and guest invitations. The organizers encouraged us to bring family, to let them witness the honor. I sat at the dining table with my laptop open, my parents and Armin chatting nearby. My hands shook as I cleared my throat. They said I can invite family to the keynote, I announced. Abu murmured, not looking up from his phone. Armand stretched lazily. When is it? Next Friday. At the National Conference Hall, it's being televised. Amy pursed her lips. We'll see. Armin might have a brand event that day. For a second, rage flared so hot I almost screamed. But I swallowed it down, forcing a calm smile. I've already sent you the invitations. I lied. All you need to do is show up. Inside, though, I whispered to myself, you will come. And when you do, you'll finally see me. And that was the moment I understood that my silence had been their comfort. But my voice, on a stage too big to ignore, would be their reckoning. The morning of the conference arrived heavy with anticipation. I woke before dawn, heart thundering, as if my body already knew this was the day something would finally change. Outside, the city yawned awake, distant horns, the rumble of buses, the faint smell of fresh bread from the corner shop. I slipped into the navy blue dress I had ironed 3 times the night before. It was simple but elegant, the kind of dress that made me feel like my spine was a steel rod instead of a question mark. I pinned my hair neatly, applied the lightest touch of makeup, and tucked the award plaque into my tote, not because I needed it on stage, but because I wanted it near me like a talisman. As I adjusted my blazer in the mirror, I whispered to my reflection, today they will see you. At breakfast, Amy and Abu were dressed semi-formally. Amy in a beige shalwar kameez, Abu in a blazer. Arman, on the other hand, wore an outfit better suited for an Instagram shoot: checkered trousers, shiny loafers, and a shirt so bright it seemed determined to outshine everyone else. We'll come for a little while, Lena, Abu said, sipping his tea. But we can't stay too long. Armin has to prepare for his Dubai trip tomorrow. Course. Always, Arman. I nodded, though inside I clenched my jaw. That's fine, I thought. You won't need to stay long to see what's coming. We drove together to the National Conference Hall, as the building came into view, glass walls gleaming in the sunlight. A red carpet rolled out across the steps. I felt my breath hitch. Cameras clustered outside, reporters with microphones, photographers snapping away. Armin leaned forward from the back seat, whistling. Wow, they really go all out for these geek things, huh? I ignored him. Inside, volunteers ushered us to the reserve section. A giant banner hung above the stage, National Youth Science Conference, Innovating Tomorrow. Rows of dignitaries filled the front seats. The smell of polished wood and expensive perfume mingled in the air. I spotted Dr. Malik waving at me, pride radiating from his face. You're ready? He mouthed. I nodded, pulse racing. When the announcer's voice boomed through the microphone, I nearly jumped out of my seat. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our keynote speaker, Ms. Lena Rahman, recipient of the National Innovation Fellowship. The applause thundered, cameras flashing as I walked onto the stage. For once, the light was mine. Bright, hot, blinding, but mine. I gripped the podium, exhaled, and began. My journey began not in a lab, but in a small neighborhood where I watched people I cared about suffer silently. One of them was my neighbor, who struggled with undiagnosed tremors for years before finally learning he had Parkinson's disease. By then, it was too late to prevent the damage. That question haunted me. What if we had seen it earlier? Slides illuminated behind images of my prototype, charts, patient testimonials. My project, Tremor Trace, is not just a device. It's a promise. A promise that families won't have to wait years for answers. That a small, affordable wearable can restore dignity and hope. As I spoke, my voice grew stronger. I looked out at the sea of faceless scientists, doctors, journalists, students. They leaned forward listening, truly listening. And then I let my eyes flicker to the reserved section. My parents, Armand, their expressions stunned me. Wide-eyed mouths slightly open. For the first time in my life, I had rendered them speechless. The applause, when it came, was deafening. People rose to their feet. The sound washed over me like a tide, lifting me higher than I'd ever been allowed to stand. After the speech, the host invited me to remain on stage as a representative from the Ministry of Health walked up with an envelope. In recognition of her groundbreaking work, he announced, "We are awarding Ms. Rahman a grant to begin clinical trials of her device in collaboration with national hospitals." Gasps rippled through the hall. Cameras flashed wildly. The host handed me the oversized check and shook my hand firmly. I thought my heart might burst. Trials, real impact, lives saved. And then, like the perfect stroke of poetic justice, the host added, "We believe Ms. Rahman's work deserves to be celebrated not only in this hall, but across the nation. Tonight, she will be featured in a televised interview on the national news channel." The crowd erupted again. My eyes darted back to my family. Abu's face had softened into awe. Ami's hand covered her mouth. And Armin looked stunned, as though for once the spotlight had swiveled away from him and he didn't know what to do with his hands. After the ceremony, as we mingled in the lobby, reporters swarmed me with questions. Microphones shoved toward my face, cameras clicking furiously. How does it feel to be the youngest winner of this fellowship? What inspired you to create this device? What advice would you give young women in STEM? I answered as best I could, exhilarated, my words spilling like a river finally freed from a dam. At the edge of the crowd, I caught sight of my family. For once, no one surrounded them. They weren't the center of attention. They stood awkwardly sidelined, watching as strangers showered me with a recognition they had never offered. I approached them, flanked by a cameraman and a reporter. "This is my family," I said, smiling. "They've been with me from the start." The reporter turned to Abu. "You must be very proud of your daughter." Abu's mouth opened, closed. He nodded stiffly. "Yes, very proud." For the first time, he had to say it in public. For the first time, he had no choice but to acknowledge me. Later, at the banquet dinner, I was given the microphone once more. The hall was quieter, more intimate, but filled with the same powerful faces. I cleared my throat. "I want to thank everyone here for believing in my work. But I also want to say something personal." The audience hushed. Too often, young people, especially girls, are overlooked in their own homes. Their efforts are dismissed, their victories treated like footnotes. I know that pain intimately. My voice trembled but didn't break. But today, I stand here as proof that silence does not mean insignificance. That even if your family doesn't see you, the world can. And will. Gasps. A murmur spread. My words cut sharper than I'd intended, but I didn't care. I wasn't just speaking for me anymore. I was speaking for every girl who had been overshadowed. Every child told their dreams were less shiny than their siblings. I let the silence hang for a beat, then ended. So if anyone here has ever felt invisible, know this: you are not. The world is waiting for your voice. The applause that followed was not just polite, it was thunderous, almost reverent. When I finally returned to our table, my family sat stiffly. The humiliation was painted across their faces not because I had failed, but because I had succeeded so publicly that their neglect was undeniable. Everyone had seen it. Everyone had